Hi, welcome back. In today's video, we will discuss the differences between calculated columns and measures. If we need to understand the differences, first we need to understand what is calculation context. There are two types of calculation contexts. First one is row level context, and second one is filter level context. Calculated columns are computed in row-level context. If we have 10 rows in a table, if we try to create a new calculated column, then the table will get a new column and each row will have its own values based on the calculation. And each row's result is stored in the data model as part of the table. Whereas, measure is evaluated based on filter context. A measure computed on the fly in the form of aggregations or visuals. A measure is always calculated dynamically based on selected filters on the report. A measure value is not stored in the data model. It is only calculated when it's needed. We will understand the differences in a better way when we look at the examples. A calculated column always uses physical storage in the model. The more calculated columns we add to the model, the more space it will occupy. Calculated columns are mainly used for categorization and labeling, whereas measures do not occupy any storage physically. They are computed at query time, when the user is interacting with report. By choosing different filters, measures are more efficient for aggregations and numeric calculations. Calculated columns are static or fixed in nature once they are calculated. The calculated columns values will only change when we refresh the model, and also provided with new data. Whereas measures get recalculated every time when the user slices and dices the data. Let's look at some examples. We are using a sample sales dataset with 10 rows. Let's create some calculated columns. First, we create the sales amount calculated column for each row. We create that column by multiplying unit price into quantity. To create a calculated column, we right-click on Sales Dataset and select New Column. As you can see, the sales amount is calculated and stored for each row. We can see that it is physically created in the table. Let's create another calculated column which will create the month name from sales date. We will use the format function by passing sales date and format string as parameters. As we can see, the month name got created. Let's create another calculated column called bulk order. We call a sale as bulk order if the quantity is greater than 10. We pass value as yes when it's greater than 10, and no if the quantity is less than 10. We have created the bulk order column by using if statement. We can also do some formatting on sales amount column by changing the format to currency. and add 2 decimal values to it. As you can see, we have created 3 calculated columns and the size of the table is increased physically. Let's create some measures now. We will create a total sales measure. We use the sum function for creating the measure. The sum function will accept a column as parameter and calculate the sum of that column. You can see that total sales measure is created, but it is not visible in the table. It is only stored as a formula in the table. It will get calculated in the report when we slice and dice the data. Let's create another measure called number of sales. We will use count rows function to calculate these measures. Now let's create a report and see how these calculated columns and measures are displayed in the report. Let's go to Reports pane by clicking Report icon on left side of the page. Let's create a table visual and pull some columns from Sales table. Let's increase the size of the font for a better visibility. Now let's create 2 card visuals and pull the total sales measure and number of sales measure. Give some background color to the measure visuals. Now let's create a slicers on month name column, region column, and bulk order column. Now let's slice the report on month name and see how the total sales measure and number of sales measure are getting recalculated dynamically, whereas the sales amount column remains static for each sale record. This is the main difference between calculated column and measure. Let's also slice on region column and see how the measures are changing dynamically. Hope you understand the difference between calculated columns and measures. See you in the next video. Thanks.